Now, Executive Suites with WPRI.com reporter Ted Nisi.
Welcome to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi, always glad to have you with us. Now, if you're a car aficionado, you will definitely want to be stay tuned for the full episode this week because we're going to talk later on with the guys at Oxford Motorcars. It's a company right now out of East Providence. They take in some really cool classic cars. They keep them on the road. They shine them up. They do everything, and they have a cool story to tell. So we're going to talk with them a little later. But first, very glad to be rejoined by someone who's been with us on the program before, John Picerne. He is the founder and the CEO of Corvias Group, which you might have known under its previous names, under the Picerne name, but Corvias covers everything now. John, good to have you back.
It's good to be back.
Welcome back to the show. You like cars too, I learned when we were waiting to go on.
I do enjoy cars.
So yeah, you might like that segment even better.
I might stick around for that.
Maybe we'll keep you on to see what you think. So, your family business, as I said, there's been name changes and stuff, but actually goes all the way back to the 20s, almost a century here. More recently, you'd gotten into military housing. People might have heard the name Picerne Military Housing. Then, around the time you were on our show, actually last time 4 years ago, you put the Corvias Group brand name over the whole company as that evolution. Tell us about that. What was the thinking then, and what had been changing that led to that?
Well, so my grandfather actually did find a company, found the company back in the mid-20s as a brokerage firm, development firm. My dad took it over in the 50s and 60s. My brothers and I got involved in kind of the 80s. Back in the mid-90s, I got engaged with the United States Department of Defense working on solving what was really a systemic kind of infrastructure challenge they had for their family housing. About 10 years into this, we started to realize the companies themselves, the needs and the desires of the Department of Defense versus what the public sector was looking for from my family's housing just wasn't meshing, so we decided to separate. So in 2005, I purchased what was then Picerne Military Housing. By 2010 timeframe, we needed to expand and move our horizons out beyond military housing, so we changed the name from Picerne Military Housing to Corvias, which Corvias was a name made up by a marketing firm, but it means, and that roughly means in Latin, by way of the heart, because our kind of the way we make decisions in dealing with the folks that we deal with, the United States Department of Defense and colleges and stuff like that, we make our decisions really more based on what's the right thing to do versus just pure profit motive.
So how's business been in the 4 years since we saw you?
Phenomenal. So we've expanded tremendously. We've moved into working with infrastructure on college campuses, including housing as well as other infrastructure challenges that they have, as well as stormwater management and infrastructure challenges in Prince George's County, Maryland, which we discussed. And so things are going really well.
And I want to ask you mentioned that Prince George, you have some interesting projects. We're going to talk about a couple of them. One of them that I found interesting as I was reading what you guys are up to is you've gotten involved in Prince George's County, Maryland in a public-private partnership to retrofit their stormwater systems. Now, when I wear my political hat, that's a big issue in a lot of jurisdictions, how to get their stormwater management stuff up to speed. What's that project? How are you doing? How's a private company helping the public sector get that done?
So I think if I can peel it back just a little bit. So if you think about the challenge that we have kind of in infrastructure across this country, and we both read some of the same data, that we have over a $3 trillion backlog in infrastructure challenges, bridges, roads, stormwater, wastewater, major public facilities. We also have almost $750 million in deferred maintenance and backlog for infrastructure, buildings, and so forth on college campuses. So you have to first start with understanding and identifying what the problem is. Secondly, you have to look at what the challenge that these kind of bureaucracies have in trying to solve the problem. One of the biggest challenges in stormwater management is we spend so much time on engineering and design for every small program that's going to be put in place. So what we were able to do by taking a fresh approach to this was we were able to get together with the Maryland Department of Environment, aggregate best practices, and not go through all of the same design processes over and over and over again. That's one way we were able to do that. And by doing that, we were able to cut the cost almost in half for implementing the work. So where a typical municipality or county like Prince George's would have done maybe 100 acres worth of retrofitting, we've already done over 1,400 acres in only about 18 months.
So Maryland, far from the only place, as I said, that has those kind of challenges. Are you hearing a lot of interest in these kind of, public-private partnership comes up a lot. You don't always see it actually get executed. Are you getting interest? People noticing what you're doing?
Tremendous. So you have to look at, there's a great theory in life about, In order to move forward, the pain of standing still has to be greater than the perceived pain of moving forward. So in a place like Maryland, where it surrounds the Chesapeake Bay, the largest estuary in America, and has tremendous challenges with EPA and focus from the EPA, they have a higher sense of need, so a higher sense of pain if they don't move forward. So we're seeing more of that in Maryland. We're also starting to see it in Virginia, again around the Chesapeake Bay. We are seeing it here in Rhode Island. I mean, there's been conversations already taking place about combining cities and towns. There's 5 cities in Rhode Island that are talking to get together to aggregate work to help fix the drainage going into the Providence River. Mm-hmm. So we're having those conversations, but still it's early. I mean, Prince George's County really is a first of its kind partnership to do this. And so we're hopeful that things are going to move forward. It has to happen because we're just way behind, and flooding is taking place and beach closures and things like that. So we feel like this is the right way ahead. It'll just take time for people to catch up.
You mentioned Rhode Island. there's been the huge CSO project. People remember the big dig for sewage they've been doing for years, and that phase 3 is supposed to come. Looking at over, I think, $1 billion in the end for that project. Is there any argument to looking at these kind of public-private partnerships in that project?
There
should be. It's not done yet? You think so?
There should be, absolutely. I think the interesting thing to this point is the challenge with public-private partnerships. So public-private partnerships in America is pretty new. I mean, in Europe it's been done a lot. In Australia it's been done tremendously. Canada it's been picked up, but here it's new. The biggest problem I have, even with the term public-private partnership, is most people think it's the public laying off the risk to the private sector, and they forget the third piece, which is partnership. So it's not about laying off risk. It's about sharing risk. It's about sharing the results, and it's about coming to a common way of solving a problem. And the only way you're going to do that is if the public sector does rely on the expertise of the private sector in a partnership, and not say, okay, private sector, you put up the money, you take the risk, we're going to back out. Mm-hmm. Because at the end of the day, it still is the public sewer, it still is the public roads, it's still the public, stormwater, beaches, and all that stuff. It's not owned by the private sector. So we do see there's a benefit to some form of partnership solution for any of these kind of deep systemic infrastructure challenges. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It has to be looked at, but I think there is that opportunity.
Interesting. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk more with John Picerne about all the things Corvias Group is up to, including a huge deal they did recently down in Georgia. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nesi, and we're talking this hour with John Picerne. He's the founder and CEO of Corvias Group. They do all sorts of different real estate projects, a number of partnerships right now with the public sector, which is interesting. Started with the defense world, but now moving into things. And I want to talk about another one, which is really interesting. You were selected by the University System of Georgia for a deal valued at $548 million to manage their student housing for 65 years. As a 31-year-old, that sounds like a long, long time, I have to tell you, when you read that. But how big a deal was that deal for your company?
Well, it's like Prince George's County. It's a one of a kind, first of its kind, and we are starting to already see more and more of these lining up. So it's huge. I mean, it took us from an idea of how to help college campuses change the way not only do they do housing, but how do they, as we talk, solve their systemic infrastructure challenges. Housing is just one portion of it. Being able to raise $550 million for the system of Georgia to help them pay off some debt, build some new housing, solve other challenges that they're having. I mean, one of the things we're working on now is kind of a second tier to this first phase, raising some capital because the Georgia State School wants to buy the old Fulton County Stadium to turn it into their sports complex. So we provide them not only access to capital, but solutions that are different in ways to deal with these challenges. The interesting thing about 65 years is that shows to us a deep commitment that they've decided they're in the academics business, they're in the teaching business, education business, they're not in the housing or dining or bookstore business. And I think what we're starting to see more and more, both with municipalities, with the federal government, and with colleges and universities, is people are getting back to what their core competencies are and trying to get away from the other stuff. And for many, many years, and the reason they're bureaucracies is because for many years they just took on everything that they were going to do. They figured they were best to do it themselves because they understood the students, they understood their world better than anybody else, and therefore they had to do it. and we've all seen how flawed that theory is. So that's kind of what's taking place.
It's also interesting in both these, the Prince George's stormwater project are on, and this, and you keep saying to get the public sector government to do a brand new way of doing things. I cover government. That can be very hard to get a government. Understandably, to some extent, there's risk when you do something new. So how hard has it been to convince, cajole, persuade the officials in these jurisdictions that take this new approach to doing this, it's going to work out for you?
So I'm going to flip that upside down for a second. So I would have thought maybe a year ago it was cajoling, convincing, whatever. It actually, what it is trying to show folks the challenge that they're in first, and then trying to get them to muster the courage to do something different. And it takes a lot of courage. I mean, I don't think people go into government because they're high risk takers. I don't think people go into higher learning academia because they're high risk takers. I think it takes a lot of courage to be willing to take this kind of risk to do something different. So I applaud the people who step out and want to do something. It does take a little bit of prodding to get them to see the depth of the challenge that they have in front of them. And I've said to folks recently, most people are either one of two categories. Either they're on the climb of the mountain, or they don't realize they're actually in front of the avalanche. And if you're in front of the avalanche, you better move fast. Yeah. If you're on the climb of the mountain and it's going to be successful, you can stay on that climb. But we are trying to help folks understand the difference.
We're talking middle 2016. We've all been watching the construction sector for a number of years now as a sign of, is the recovery durable? Is the economic health of the country coming back? What's your sense from talking to your peers, your colleagues out there, of how the mood is in construction right now?
I think it's coming back. It's getting better. We're seeing house sales up. We're seeing home construction up across the country. We're seeing price of materials and labor going up, which is a good sign actually for us. But I think it's slow, and I think it's like where the numbers, the Economist is showing, and the numbers are dictating. It's a 2+% growth. It's not great. It's not robust, and maybe that's a good thing because we've all lived. I mean, the reason I got into the military housing business is because I lived through 3 boom to bust times prior to that. So
did the 80s in Rhode Island, you're going to be a little nervous.
Exactly right.
On Rhode Island, how deep is the commitment Picerne and you, Corvias, I should say, has to staying and growing in Rhode Island as your headquarters?
Well, we are growing, and we are committed to Rhode Island, and we're having good conversations inside of the state of Rhode Island. But I think what we have to realize, and kind of my thought, my plug is, I think when we talk about these systemic infrastructure challenges, what we have to get our mindsets out of is this is not a government problem, nor is it a public problem. It's an our problem. So we want to drive on roads, we want to drive on bridges. Roads and bridges need to be fixed. Society needs to help the government fix those. So we need to stop kind of the fighting and the bashing of whether it's the toll program or something, and find the common ground that says if we do it right and we do it efficiently and effectively, we need to do stuff. Right now, I just find too many people on either end of the spectrum fighting with each other, and nothing's getting done. So we're committed to being here as long as the conversation can get shifted to that place.
Finally, about 30 seconds left. Memorial Day is coming up. One of your big charitable involvements is with Vet Voice. What are you working on with those guys?
So Vet Voice, and I'll be really brief. Obviously, the problem we have in this country is less than 1% of our population serve in our military forces. And when you narrow it down, it's even less than that because most of the serving members are repeat. It's brothers, cousins, uncles, aunts, whatever. So what Vet Voice does is Vet Voice was set up to put military members or veterans into congressional offices outside of the traditional ones that are on the committees, so that the congressman would at least, and congresswoman would at least understand what veterans' lives look like, so they wouldn't be voting on veterans' issues or on military issues based on numbers on a piece of paper. We have to realize this is a human aspect of our country, and that's what we're doing. So we went and supported this endeavor to try to give back to that.
Fascinating. All right, John Picerne from Corvias Group, good to have you back.
Thanks
for being here. Don't go away, though, because coming up next, we're going to talk to the guys from Oxford Motorcars about some cool classic cars and what they're doing on that. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi, glad to have you with us. And right now we're going to talk with two guys from Oxford Motorcars in East Providence. Chris Fragomeni, he's the co-owner and president of the company, and Joe Manzi, he's their general manager and head mechanic. Guys, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So we're going to talk cars, and I found out about you guys from a friend of mine who is a big car guy, and he was all excited about what you're doing, the cars he sees when he goes in and visits you there. Chris, I'll start with you. Tell us a little about what you do at Oxford Motorcars and how the company was founded, where it came from.
Yeah, sure. Oxford Motorcars is just a full-service automotive service company for vintage automobiles. It's what we've tried to do is make service for your vintage automobile logistics-free. So we pick up your car, we drop your car off. You don't have to worry about who's picking it up, who's dropping it off. We send you quotes, estimates. We keep you fully informed. There's no secrets about how we're taking care of your car. The company started up with me and my best friend, Jeremy Savage, who's my co-partner. When we were seniors in high school, I had a part-time job. He had a part-time job, and our parents said, okay, enough of this part-time business. You're going to get a full, real job. And so we were signed up for construction the next morning to do construction at 6 a.m., which I wasn't really big into. So he calls me up. He says, listen, I found 4 cars in upstate Interlake in New York. We're going to go buy them, we're going to flip them, and we're going to make money, and this is going to be our job. And I said, sure, why not? So we go up there, we buy these cars, we cobble together some money, we buy these 4 cars, and we sell them. And we make a dismal profit, but that's not really what it was about to us. It was about saving these cars. It was about bringing these cars back to what they were. And it kind of just steamrolled from there. We started selling more and more cars. As sales increased, we found a need for service, to have an in-house service on our own cars. We were outsourcing that stuff, but we decided to bring on our own in-house team. So Joe came along.
Yeah, and Joe, you're the general manager, so you're the day-to-day guy in charge over there. So are you guys spending most of your time on, is it, for people, is it more like a dealership where you're walking folks around showing them? Or are you mostly in the back and under the car, fixing things? What's day-to-day like?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I mean, the building's always open while we're there, so anybody can walk in off the street and come in and see the amount of cars that we have in the building. But most of the time we're working on cars. That's really what it's about. It's about the service of the vintage vehicles. Local people in the area with classic cars, who have cars that have been either sitting in the garage for 10 years, they were their father's cars, they'd never been driven, time to wake them up, or local members of local vintage car clubs that just need regular maintenance. So that's pretty much what we do.
Did you always, were you always into classic cars, or were you doing regular, because you came out of NEIT, right? And
yeah,
so
I went to England Tech, I went to Frederick Mogul Institute of Technology in Michigan, and we
did they teach you with classic cars?
Yeah, I worked at a local shop in Cranston, where I worked on modern cars most of the time.
Yeah.
And there was a few customers there that had vintage vehicles. They had Jaguar E-types, stuff like that, old Mustangs, and that's kind of where the
is it more fun with an older car? Is it because it's a challenge?
Oh yeah. I mean, the new cars today, they're all electronics. You still need to be very intuitive with any kind of car. But with a classic car, it's really it's a different kind of skill set. You can actually get in there and change things, instead of plugging in a computer and saying, okay, this is wrong, let's change this and see what happens. You can physically get in there and turn screws.
I can totally see it. Chris, tell us about the space you're in East Providence. 15,000, sure, and what? It's Rhode Island, so what did it used to be?
Yeah, we're at 330 Waterman Avenue in East Providence, and we have a 14,000-foot old factory building, square foot, old factory building, and about half of that's the shop, a quarter of that's probably our showroom, and the rest of it we use to store our customers' automobiles. Whether it's month-to-month storage, we offer that as a service, or whether it's just storing the cars while they're in the shop. But it's a great facility. I mean, like Joe said, our doors are always open. People walk in and they're just amazed. It's quite the place to be, and it's quite the place to work.
Now, do you with classic cars, how hard is it? Recently I was at a gas station and a guy pulls up beside me and he had a 1924 Model T. Beautiful, you guys would love it. Beautiful car, and yet I was thinking to myself, I was like, where do you get the part? I assume Ford's not selling Model T parts anymore out of Michigan or whatever. Right. How hard is it to keep these cars going and get what they need and everything?
Yeah, I mean, you'd be surprised how many things are actually available. There's a lot of outlets, of people who have manufactured parts and replacement parts. It's really dependent on the model. You know, we have a 1928 Bentley 4.5 liter in there that we work on. You know, difficult to get parts. A lot of the stuff comes from the UK. You know, but you know, typical American iron. A lot of the stuff is local, available in Napa, places like that. But we have a great, you know, web of sources, you know, that we can get any part, and we fabricate a lot of stuff candidly too. You know, because if you can't find it, you know, you have to make it work, especially with these cars.
Yeah. Chris, so you're actually a full-time lawyer, right?
I am.
So this is a passion project for you, right?
It is. It was. It's always been my passion, and you know, from the inception of the company, it's what I've just loved. Vintage cars. My first car was a 1967 Pontiac Firebird. It wasn't a conventional, you know, first car. It took me 3 years to restore, but that was my first car, and it's always been a hobby. But yes, from 9 to 5, I am a lawyer. But this is kind of, you know, I come over here and hang out, and so I classify it as my playtime.
So yeah, so you've seen a lot of cars. You've worked on a number of cars. I'll ask Joe first. Do you have a favorite of all the ones you've gone through?
My favorite would be a Jaguar E-Type.
What year?
Probably 68.
Probably 68, but you'll take 67
Any
if you have
E-Type,
to.
really, yeah.
How about you?
My favorite car is my car. My 67 Firebird.
You still got it?
I still have it. Yep.
Yeah.
I'll always have it. I'll never get rid of it. It's my first car. You know,
How
I can't
hard
let it
was
go.
it as young guys, you and your partner there, to start a business, particularly when you're both lawyers, so you
Sure,
law school and stuff? How difficult was it?
And to be honest with you, we're kind of backed into the business thing because it really is a hobby first. And you know, we realized that, you know, when you get into a business, you start having overhead. There's a lot of administrative stuff that goes along with it, and we were a little hesitant at first to, you know, become a business. But you know, we hired a great team, and to be honest with you, with the team we have, it's pretty simple. So you know, hats off to them. They keep it simple and they keep it good.
And Joe, how much? I mean, I got to imagine if I'm driving some beautiful restored 1960s car, I don't necessarily want AAA to come if the car has a problem, right? What kind of level of service do you have to provide to folks if they bring their cars through you guys?
Yeah, I mean, it's very inclusive. I mean, you know, 9 out of 10 of the customers have my cell phone number, and if they don't have it, it's because they don't have my card yet. You know, when their cars break, they call me. You know, we have a tow truck that's, you know, basically built for these cars. You know, you don't want a AAA flatbed coming out there and yanking the control arm out of your Daimler or something like that. You know, so there's a certain level of care that needs to be taken even for that. But you know, right from repair to when it breaks down next time in, you know, we'll come tow it, pick it up. You know.
And you guys, you mentioned England. I think you ship a number of cars to England, right? How did that play in that you ended up with some of that business?
Yeah, in the beginning, we have a family friend over in Pontefract, England, and he's also into cars. And he restores a lot of cars over there. And they're actually pretty tough to find decent cars sometimes in England. So what they'll do is they'll come over to the American market, kind of play the exchange rate sometimes, and we'll send them over, and he'll restore them and either send them back or sell them out there. But that was also how, you know, we kind of fell into the business as well.
Fascinating. All right, guys. Well, if you are into cars, you got to check out Oxford Motorcars on social media. Their Instagram, especially their Facebook. They have a lot of pictures that if you're a car aficionado, are going to get a big kick out. Joe Manzi, Chris Fragomeni, thank you so much for being here. You can visit them if you want to go see the cars over there in East Providence. Google them up. Thank you for being with us on Executive Suite. We'll see you back here next week.